Hi, my name is Lauren Eckstein. I'm a lawyer with the HGA Law Group. I focus on estate planning and estate administration. And so I help people just review where they're at in their stage of life and what needs they need to be addressing with respect to their estate.
Hi, I'm Brandy Kozakowski, Principal Financial Planner with HGA Wealth and Estate Planning. And I'm a certified financial planner who mainly focuses on holistic financial planning for clients. And welcome back to Sim Sessions.
So we're here today to discuss how our two areas connect and intersect. And so that's estate planning and wealth management. Tell me about wealth management and estate planning in your practice.
Sure. So when a client comes in and they're looking for a holistic financial plan, they're usually talking about retirement planning and estate planning. So for the estate planning piece, we are, mainly looking at, what has the client accumulated over their lifetime? What do they see happening with their estate? Do they have a spouse? Do they have children, grandchildren, favorite charities, different things like that? And how would they like to see their assets distributed at the end of the day? And of course, there's always the tax consideration, right? No one wants to leave more taxes on the table than they need to. So there's a big tax planning discussion there. And, generally a lot of clients, maybe they don't even have any wills planning yet, or they have a will, but it's, been 10, 15, 20 plus years since they reviewed it, and a lot of things have changed since then. So that's when HGA Wealth always likes to, discuss if there's a will in place. If there's not, then we like to connect with you over at law to, discuss the benefits of wills and estates planning from a legal perspective with clients. And if there is a will in place and they want to review, maybe their lawyer isn't here anymore. Maybe they've moved from another province and now they need someone local. And again, that's an easy introduction to your team. And a lot of the times we have a lot of the underlying documents to help HGA Wealth with, the wills planning. So that's an easy synergy for us in the office. So once I send them over to you, Lauren, what do you mainly talk about with clients?
Yeah, so whether it's starting fresh because a client or a person doesn't have an estate plan in place yet, or it's updating, we want to review, where a person is at in their life. Are they married? Do they have children? Do they own a business? What type of property do they own? So we want to review all of those things because those are the considerations that can direct how, one wants to and needs to address their estate. So we will look at if somebody's already has estate planning documents. We'll look at them. We'll talk about what's changed since those documents were last done, and then what changes they see that they would like to make to those documents. So it may be including, a child that's been recently born, or it might be updating the document because their children are no longer minors, and so they may want to include them as executors or have a different plan for distributing their share of the estate. And then when it comes to, drafting new documents, it's a matter of having our clients fill out a questionnaire and getting a really good idea of what their estate consists of. So that's assets, liabilities, insurance, family dynamics sometimes comes into play, especially nowadays with a lot of blended families. That's a huge consideration. And so we see, different strategies being implemented for addressing, non-biological children, stepchildren, that type of thing. So yeah, we do that questionnaire, review it with them, and then, we get going on drafting the documents. And from there, it can be, a straightforward drafting process. And sometimes it takes a lot more time to individualize and, finalize documents if they're more complicated.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how things look on our end.
So from your perspective, from a lawyer's perspective, when you're working with clients and you're, drafting their wills or drafting their legal documents, what do you see as the big advantages, especially even from a business owner's perspective, of having their wealth planner down the hall or their accountant down the hall?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's huge, because a big part of what can come into estate planning is also tax planning. And so, while I can have the strategies from a legal perspective and from, that estate planning perspective, it's so nice to be able to go down the hall and have a conversation with an accountant or with yourself about the tax implications or the tax benefits of doing one plan versus a different one. So that's huge, because, I don't have that specialization, that tax specialization. I'm aware of the issues, but to be able to speak to somebody who has that specific knowledge is very key.
Yeah, I find that as well. When I'm discussing potential opportunities that I see for clients from a tax perspective or from an estate planning perspective, or even just from a retirement income perspective, and then to be able to just go down and talk to the accountant about how they're treating income and maybe why they're treating income that way coming out of a corporation, so that I can get an understanding of the reasoning behind it.
Yes.
And then, there are some suggestions from a tax perspective that I might give a client with regards to wills planning. But legally, is that even something that makes sense in the overall context of their estate? Is there a better way to do it maybe? And I always find too that, having a number of different departments who deal with the client on a number of, different perspectives. So from an accounting perspective, from a wealth management perspective, from a legal perspective, you kind of get more of a holistic knowledge of the client and what's important to them in each of those situations. And I think that really lends to a more personalized and a more specific experience for clients.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, agreed. And what would you say when you're, speaking with clients, is the biggest tax concern or tax related question that you would get?
Like relating to wills and estates?
Yeah, like plan. Yes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I
when
think
it comes to planning, yes.
Registered money is, one of the big questions for clients, because what are they aware of what happens when both spouses pass away, if there are two spouses? Because, there's always a spousal rollover that we can take advantage of to kind of kick the can down the line as far as tax goes, right?
Defer. Yeah.
But when it comes to the end, that money all becomes taxable. So as a planner, I do my best to try and deplete those funds in a tax efficient manner first, so that, as long as people live to life expectancy, there's not a big hit on that amount of the estate.
Absolutely.
And then, some corporate planning. I think a lot of people have questions about, owning corporations and owning shares, and what happens when they pass away, and what's a more tax efficient way to fund a death tax. So we look at insurance in some instances and, structuring for business buyouts. Like there's lots of different options. That's a whole
The
podcast on its
kettle
own.
of fish.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, excellent.
So, Lauren, a question I have for you, because, I get asked this question by clients too when I'm reviewing wills with them. Are there some opportunities to make administering a will easier? Do you see, sometimes where wills and estates are set up and maybe there's opportunities to improve upon how that estate will eventually be administered?
Yeah, I think there's definitely one common area that, I don't know that everybody considers as much as they should, and that's who you're appointing to be your executor of your estate. And so there seems to be this idea that it's, a privilege, or it's something that you're giving to some, special role that you're giving to someone, which it is a special role, but it's also a huge responsibility, and it can be very burdensome.
Mm-hmm.
So a main, a thing I like to go over with clients when discussing who their executor is to ensure that it's somebody that would be willing to take on this role, so that they've been informed of this, and it's something that they understand could be a time-consuming position, and something that they will have to really focus on and take seriously. Not that they wouldn't take it seriously, but
yeah,
and B, that they have the traits and the skills to be able to take on that role. So organization, and following up, and as much as an executor will have a lawyer to guide them and assist them in the tasks, a lot of it is executor
mm-hmm.
Led, or they need to be making decisions and things like that, and staying on top of things, and providing final instructions to the lawyer. So having somebody who you trust is going to be able to take on that role and be organized, and understand that it's going to be a process.
Mm-hmm.
And then another issue is, a lot of the times clients express some, apprehension on their part in appointing one child over another,
mm-hmm.
feeling like they might, hurt someone's feelings. But sometimes what we see is if children are appointed together who don't necessarily get along, that can really inhibit the estate administration process. It can slow things down. And so, again, it's about appointing the right person and not appointing somebody because of, feeling obligated to.
So is that a service that you offer at HGA Law, is estate execution as well? Or is that something that you would generally advise clients to look elsewhere for?
Yeah, I think the starting point is usually a spouse, because they know, or a partner, because they know the ins and, generally more about the estate.
Mm-hmm.
So what investments there are, what, accounts, what assets there are, things like that. So it's always good to have your executor someone who has either access to that information or, knows where to find information about an estate. So, we generally people do want to appoint someone they know. So either a family member or a trusted friend. Sometimes it can be a trusted, another trusted advisor of some sort. And sometimes that does fall, HGA, CPA often. We have advisors from there who are appointed because, again, they're knowledgeable on the person's estate, whether, there's businesses involved, things like that. And so it is certainly something, and also lawyers within our group have been appointed executors as well. So it's definitely an option. One thing that comes with that is sometimes an increased expense to the estate, because you do have a professional, you're engaging a professional services. So that's one consideration. Although any executor that you do appoint, is entitled to an executor fee for their administration of your estate, whether family member or not. So that's also just another consideration.
I always find it important, especially when, children or trusted friends are appointed as executors and there are assets to be distributed. I always suggest that when we're doing planning, that clients bring those people in, so that they're aware of what's happening with the estate, what's coming, what their, intended wishes are, because a piece of paper really can only say so much, and it doesn't really convey the emotion, I don't think, behind, the reasons where things were set up the way they were, or, how they feel about different planning items. So that's something that I encourage in my practice. And I know that we could sit down collaboratively with clients and their executors or their, trusted advisors in order to make sure that what they want to have happen is what eventually happens as closely as possible, as easily as possible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if somebody does have very specific reasonings for, the setup of their will, not necessarily including those in the will itself, but a memorandum to the will to just provide context or, again, specifics as to why they've done what they've done, can just help the executor in the background answer questions that beneficiaries may have, or just be able to make it a bit of a smoother process, because we know that, it's a difficult time when a loved one passes, and then unfortunately, the potential for an inheritance also, can have people making decisions that can be difficult for that executor to deal with, or just, approaching the situation in a way that's makes the executor's job more difficult. So we do encourage including memorandums or letters to the executor to provide guidance and that background context.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, the topics of wills and estates and estate planning, it can be uncomfortable. It can be an uncomfortable conversation to have. It can be hard to, stare your inevitable future in the face and then plan for your own demise. It can be really emotional to let go of things that you have worked so hard for so many years, and then, plan to have them succeeded to someone else that, you'll have feelings around it one way or another.
Absolutely.
And I think I encourage those conversations, and I find it a privilege to work with people and help them through that difficult, uncomfortable feeling, in order to get to a place where you feel at least okay with the way things are, laid out, and you feel at peace and you've got peace of mind.
Yeah, and I always recommend, to the extent possible, for people to inform their family members, so children, spouse, whoever else may be included, of what their will is going to look like, so that it's not this shock,
Yeah.
or, you know, if there maybe there's gonna be a processing time for some, you know, some family members or individuals, potential beneficiaries. So I always encourage, if the dynamic is there, for there to be an open discussion among family members about, you know, what that estate planning is going to look like. Because again, I mean, estate administration starts very quickly after death.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, you're taking steps right away.
Yeah.
And so to, you know, limit as much of that shock or surprise, or, you know, that new information during an already very difficult time, I think is really important. And again, it's such a difficult thing to think about. Nobody wants to think about, you know.
Well, I think you and I could sit around and tell stories all afternoon about scenarios on, you know, what happened and how to make it easier and what have you. But I think if people are, you know, ready to take that step, Lauren and I are here with the HGA group to help you work through your wills and estates planning from both a financial perspective and a legal perspective. So
absolutely,
we welcome your call.
Yeah.